Oh, hello there, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, joining us here on YouTube on the Reality After Show channel. Kudos to Johnny Fairplay for building such a nice setup here, and I can't wait to get started. Thank you, everybody who's joining us for the inaugural episode of Gabe's Big Move, where I'm going to be taking on all different kinds of Survivor topics, past, present, future. And right now, as we're in the midst of the climax of season 48, we got to talk some season 48. But just as a notice for everybody of what I'm hoping this show is going to be moving forward, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in the off season. And it's really what I'm excited for most is going to be what we're doing in the Survivor off season. But we got to tackle Survivor 48. I mean, the finale's tomorrow, right? So thank you so much again for joining me for the state of the season address for season 48. I want to go over this season and talk about where we're at right now. This is not going to be a full season recap. We're going to tackle that next week. What this is going to be is talking about where the season is right now, heading into tomorrow night's finale, and talking about the 5 people that are left, the 5 finalists that are left. And just up front, regardless of whatever your opinion may be of the 5 people that are left, you gotta give them kudos for making it all the way to the end. It is a ridiculously difficult task to make it as far as they've made it. So to Joe, Kyle, Camila, Eva, Mitch, a massive tip of the cap to all you for being finalists, and congratulations. Hopefully, wherever you're watching tomorrow, it's going to be surrounded by friends, loved ones, family, and it should be a very happy event for all of you, no matter how it shakes out. So getting into the state of the season address right now, I want to talk a little bit about where we're at in this season and what the general perception is of Survivor 48. And I think it's fair to say that this has been a season defined by the lack of big moves, right? The stronger just keep getting stronger and the weaker keep getting weaker. And everybody's kind of been looking around. It's like that John Travolta meme from Pulp Fiction where he kind of looks around and shrugs his shoulders, and you're wondering, where are the moves here? Where is the person that's going to have the agency to start to stack up any kind of resume? And this season has largely been devoid of it. Now, that's not to say that there's none of it, and we're going to get into that in just a few minutes here. But I would say when you look at the entire scope of Survivor 48, it really is defined by this lack of big moves and an entire season's worth of people just playing it safe. And it's very interesting to me that that's where we're at. And more importantly, that Jeff Probst seems to adore this season as much as he does, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. This is in no way meant to be a slam against Jeff, but I'm so intrigued by why he loves this season so much. The preseason hype for this season was off the charts. He even just had an interview a couple days ago, maybe even yesterday. I'm not sure who it was with, but he had an interview very recently where he was again glazing Survivor 48. And I think it's interesting because the whole reason that Jeff and his Survivor team started the new era was the thought of how can we expedite all the best parts of Survivor? How can we have as many blind sides as possible? Let's throw a shot in the dark in there. So every vote has to be a blind side now. How can we have the game move faster? Well, let's take some days out of the full game, go from 39 to 26, so that every single day you're hustling because you're so close to the end before you know it, and you don't really have time to lounge around and catch your breath. And yet this season, there's been none of that. I mean, there really haven't been a whole lot of blind sides, if any, other than the David vote. And I guess recently the Shaheen vote, which we're going to get into as well. There haven't really been any jaw-dropping moments beyond, say, kind of running around the island and being this chaotic figure, which is something we've seen many, many times before throughout Survivor history, both in the old days and in the new era. And yet Jeff is so into this season. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and it does at the same time. And what I mean by that is that I think that the characters and the storyline of this season is everything Jeff has ever wanted out of Survivor. I think that he will go on to say that this is one of his favorite seasons of Survivor of all time. When he's retired, when he's done, if he ever does retire, I think Survivor 48 is going to hold a very, very, very special place in his heart. The reason for that is because, like I said, the characters in the storyline are so Jeff coded. I mean, you have these big, strong alpha male types that we know Jeff loves, and guys like Joe and like Kyle and like Shaheen. You have these great confessionalists in people like Camila, in people like Say, in people like Mary. And you have this relationship between Joe and Eva, which has obviously been at the core of this season. And it's this alpha protector type in Joe and this hyper competitive young girl in Eva who has gobbled up all of these different advantages and idols over the course of her time. So she is playing the game. But I think Jeff has always wanted a relationship like that to come to fruition on Survivor. Something where you have this big, strong alpha male type in Joe, and he has somebody that he's looking after, that he's protecting in Eva, but she's not just this lame duck out there. She's a fiery competitor, and she's got spunk to her, and she's playing the game hard and is playing and leaning into all these advantages that the new era has to offer. And yet, for us as viewers, it is quite boring to watch. And I think that the reason it comes off as boring is because the people who need all of these advantages and twists to break their way the most are the people who aren't getting them. I mean, I talked about this a little bit when I was on with the Barstool guys, and it's like, imagine if you watch The Lord of the Rings, and through 3 movies or through 3 books, they're going and they're collecting all these items and all these companions and all these weapons and all these pieces of armor. And then they get to Mordor and there's no battle waiting for them. And it's just a pond of lava. Throw the ring in and then everybody goes home. And that is what that feels. That's what this season feels like to me. It's what this season feels like to me, because you have Eva going over the course of this season, getting all these different advantages, getting all these idols and all these different twists breaking her way, and yet she doesn't need to use any of them. So it's like, would the game even be that dramatically different if they weren't in the game in the first place, if those idols and twists and advantages weren't in the game in the first place? And I think that a lot of those are the defining traits of season 48 so far. And those on the outside, right? That's looking at the people who are in the Power Alliance, who are doing the pagonging, if you will, of everybody else in the game. The other side of this coin is everybody who's not in that alliance, the people who aren't named Joe, Eva, Kyle, Shaheen, David, right? And I think what they're bringing to this season is foregoing the opportunities to shake up the game and swing the power in a different direction than it's been at pretty much since they've hit the merge beach, in an effort to get into that alliance, right? It feels like the biggest move anybody's wanted to make this season is to go from being outside the Power Alliance to in the Power Alliance, whether you're Mary, whether you're Mitch, whether you're whoever you may be. And nobody has really said, I don't want to be in the Power Alliance. I want to take down the Power Alliance. And I'm again so intrigued that Jeff is so into this season when that is clear as day. And it feels so anti why they started the new era. And a very common opinion of this season so far has been that this is an old school season. And in a lot of ways, I think it is. In some ways, not so much. But in a lot of ways, I do think that this is playing out like an old school Survivor season where a bunch of people rally behind some alpha personalities and they just ride it all the way to the end. And whoever's sitting at the final 3, may the best person win. And that can be fun to watch. But what I feel like it's lacking is the people on the outside having any kind of chutzpah to go and scheme against that Power Alliance. And that's going to be a big defining part of this season's legacy. That folks like Star, that folks like Mitch decided that they didn't want to make a big move against the Power Alliance. They just wanted to try to be a part of it. And obviously we saw many people over the course of this season fail in that objective and end up going home. So this is a season that I think is going to be defined by the lack of big moves, that it's going to be defined by the people on the outside of this alliance having no real intention of trying to swing the power out of that alliance, and that the move they wanted to make was to get into that alliance and not break it down. And that is something that I think is, again, and I'm not saying this as a bad thing, right? This is not an inherently bad thing, but it does feel very anti-new era. I don't think that they came up with the new era and all the different twists and all the different stipulations that they added and changes that they added to the game with a season like 48 in mind. And so it's very intriguing to me that this season has been so big up by Jeff and by the producers at Survivor. And those are all wonderful people. I have no qualm with any of them. Again, that's not a slam. It's just very intriguing to me because I felt like the reason they started the new era was to have this fast pace, keep your head on a swivel. You never know what's going to happen next kind of Survivor game every season. And this season has been anything but that. And I just find it to be very, very interesting. So that brings us to where we are now heading into this finale with the final 5 left. Joe, Eva, Kyle, and Camila find themselves in the driver's seat with Joe and Kyle as clear front runners to go win the whole thing. And that leaves you with one person really sitting on the outside right now in Mitch. And you have to wonder, will Mitch make his big move? And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes here. If you want to join the conversation, please go ahead. Leave some comments in the comment section. The comment section is live. If we get enough questions, I'd love to do a Q&A at the end of the episode. I'm hoping to go for about an hour tonight. So if you want to leave some questions in there, please feel free. I'll try to save some time at the end to answer them, whether they're related to 48 or just anything. Would be happy to answer them. But it's a totally open comment section. If you want to slam me, go for it. I love having a little bit of spice in the comment section. So don't shy away from that if that's what you're looking for. But getting back to the state of the season address here. Joe, Eva, Kyle, Camila in the driver's seat right now. It seems to be one of those 4 are going to go win. And I'm not trying to single out Mitch here, but getting in to Mitch's position in this game, he's been rather stagnant for most of the game. And I think part of that is being on a tribe that never really had to go to tribal council for the entire pre-merge. I think that was a huge deal for Mitch, other than after they tribe swap. But his original Siva was completely safe until the tribe swap happened. And they were a stacked tribe. So, I mean, could you really anticipate anything else? And credit to Mitch, he was one of the people that was carrying that original Siva tribe in just about every single challenge. And you had David, who is built like Hercules, and Kyle, who is absolutely not a slouch himself. And yet Mitch was the guy who was really carrying this tribe through a lot of the early pre-merge challenges. So huge credit to Mitch for that. But when it comes to the strategy, when it comes to the social game, and when it comes to individual immunity challenges and advantages and idols, Mitch has been very stagnant for this entire game. He lost his number 1 in charity in Mergatory, and he never really seemed to get himself back into the game. And I want to make a disclaimer here. And this is a disclaimer that I am hoping to be making before or during every single episode of this show. That what I am commentating on is the characters that were portrayed to us through this television show. I'm not making comments on these people, who they are in real life. And I'm not even making comments on what the reality of their game and their time on the island was. This is a heavily edited rendition of what actually happened out there. So what I'm talking about is the characters that we were shown over the course of this season. So with that being said, getting back into Mitch's role in this finale going into tomorrow, he loses charity in Mergatory. He never really seems to find his way back into the game after that. And it didn't really seem like there was a whole lot of action on his part to do that. He constantly finds himself in places where he could make a move, where he could rally the numbers to start chipping away at this power alliance, and he opts not to. And the only time that we ever really see Mitch address that is when he says a couple episodes ago, to make a big move, you have to be able to trust the people you're making the move with. And I don't trust any of these people. And on its face, I don't have a massive issue with that perspective. But at the same time, there's nobody that you can truly trust in a game of Survivor. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I did have blind trust for Sue when I was out there. I have no doubt that Joe and Eva have blind trust for each other. But if you find yourself in a place that Mitch finds himself in, you're not going to have full trust. But what you do have is a conjoining experience in the game with people like Star, with people like Mary, with people, to the best of his knowledge, like Camila, who are just kind of hanging out on the outside of this game and wondering, like, where's my place here? And it seems like many, many times over the course of this mid to end game of Survivor 48, Mitch could have been the person to reach his hand out and say, hey, let's build a place for us in this game. We have numbers right now. And if we can flip just one of those main alliance people, then we really got numbers to make a big move and to flip the entire power dynamic of this game on its head. And yet he never really opted to do that. And we really haven't heard a whole lot from Mitch, particularly in the end portion of this season. So I don't want to go out and say that he wasn't having those conversations. Maybe he felt like he was more in this main alliance than he ever thought, or that we ever saw, rather. But I just have to wonder, if Mitch were to sit at the end with no immunity challenge wins, 5 votes against him, he's voted wrong 3 times, which is the most of anybody left in the game, had no meaningful advantage or idle plays, and didn't orchestrate any big moves or blindsides, what exactly is his case if he's sitting at final tribal council? Right? What is he going to say to the jury that is going to swing votes away from a Kyle or away from a Joe or even from a Camila or Eva to Mitch? And I don't think that argument is there. And it's not even to say that he played a terrible game. I just don't think there's an argument that he played a better game than any of the other 4 people that are left. And the funny thing about this season is that because there have been so few moves and it has been such a not active season, that if Mitch were to orchestrate a big move here in this finale going into Final 5, if he was to go after Joe or to go after Kyle or to get Eva and or Joe to flip on the other one or something like that, there is still room here for Mitch to make a huge move and to build up a resume that is worthy of being compared to everybody else's. And that's not a statement, or rather it's not me commending Mitch's game thus far. That's a statement on how light everyone else's resume is right now. That one huge move at the end here, and maybe a win in fire making or something like that, would really be all Mitch needs to have a seat at the table. And so for Mitch's sake, I'm hoping that he can go forward and can say, all right, now's the time to execute. And he does execute. And then maybe he's sitting at Final Tribal with something to talk about that's fresh on everyone's mind. Like that's how light the resumes are right now in season 48. That one big move here at the end could be enough to put yourself in real contention to go win this thing. Now, if Mitch doesn't make that move, which we haven't seen him do once over the course of this season, I find it hard to believe that he will not be the next person voted out, that he will not finish 5th on this season. And if you're Joe, Kyle, Camila, and Eva, it's difficult for me unless, again, you want to make that big resume padding move. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why they wouldn't just go after Mitch, right? Like, well, why not? We can all be in the Final 4. One person's going to go out and fire. The other 3 are going to be sitting at Final Tribal. Like, why make things messy? And why bitter somebody that you've been working with for this entire game and then send them to the jury pissed off because you wanted to make a huge move at the final five and maybe bring Mitch to the end with you. It's a little too much, I think, for any of the four that are left there. And you hear Kyle talk about in a confessional not too long ago where he said, I don't want to hurt people, right? I don't want to backstab people in this game. I don't like the way he was so moved by talking about that. He broke down in tears in the middle of the confessional. So I don't think Kyle's going to go out and do that. I have no doubt in my mind that Joe and Eva are going to stick together. Does Camila maybe try and wiggle her way into something using Mitch as a number and teaming up with Kyle? I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. But the thing that's tough about this is that if you're Camila and you want to stir up a bunch of shit going into the final five, that grenade that you're trying to roll under somebody else's feet could blow up on yours. And that's why I don't think that this big move is going to happen in the final five, because nobody wants to be the person that goes out and tries to make a move, and everybody you're pitching that move to gets together behind your back and says, why is she making things difficult? Well, why is she doing this? Oh, she wants to pad her resume right before we go into fire making tomorrow. Okay, here's your resume. You can show it to everybody at Ponderosa when we vote you out, because we're not dealing with that. We got a plan that we're doing, and Mitch will be more than happy to jump on our bandwagon and blindside you so he can have a chance to sit at the end. So I don't see anybody left in the game other than Mitch even trying to orchestrate that move. I just don't. And maybe Mitch thinks that he's in a safer place than he really is, and he thinks that he can just come up with a plan to vote out probably Camila with the other three remaining players, and he's in with them, and that'll happen. Now, we as the audience know that that's not the case right now. So I am intrigued to see how this works out, but I am going to be shocked if anybody but Mitch goes home in the final five, just based off of the current state of things and also how all of these players have played over the course of these 25, 24 days. So, Mitch, I'm sorry, brother. I don't think you have the resume to win at the end. I don't think you have the case to make to win at the end. And I don't think you have the path to the end with just one vote left before you end up in that final four. I just don't see it. Let's transition into Eva now. Eva is a very curious case of a lot of idols, a lot of advantages, an immunity challenge win. She's at the core of the dominating Pagonging alliance of this season. She's only voted wrong once. She has 0 votes against her this season. And yet she doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of win equity going into this finale. And that's really interesting to me, because I feel like if you gave a lot of different players just the numbers, right? Forget the personality, forget the social game, just the numbers, the stats that Eva has, like, you would be like, oh my God, they're probably playing one of the best Survivor games ever. They've got all these idols, they got all these advantages, they've only voted wrong once, they've never had a vote cast against them. Like, oh my God, this is a crazy resume. And yet nobody's really looking at Eva right now as a potential winner. And I'm really curious why that is. And here's what I think it is. I think that A, she has undoubtedly been Joe's sidekick throughout the entirety of this game. I think we all see that as the audience. I think everybody out there on the island sees that it's like, okay, Joe is clearly the face of this duo. Eva is backing up Joe with whatever he wants to do. It seems like most of the time, from what we're getting as the audience, that Joe is coming to Eva with plans and Eva saying, sounds good, right? But she does deserve legitimate credit for bringing people into this power alliance. And that is where I think the core of her case for $1 million and the title of Sole Survivor comes into play. I think that she is somebody who needs to, if she's sitting at Final Tribal Council, take as much credit as she possibly can for the formation of this alliance. She can say, I'm the one who went to Joe, right? Like, we see that in the first episode. Eva goes to Joe. Joe doesn't pull her aside and say, you know, hey, you remind me of my daughter, and I'm going to keep you safe in this game. Eva goes to Joe and says, I really like you. I really want to work with you. I'm going to bond you to me with this big secret that at the time she had in terms of having autism. And I'm going to kind of assign you this role as like my protector, my guardian, whatever you want to call it. But hey, if I start having a breakdown out here or if things start going south for me, you're the guy I'm looking at. Eva did that. Joe didn't come up and do that. Joe received that. And that I think should be a big part of Eva's final tribal council speech if she's sitting there at the end. And I do think that she's in a position where, unlike Mitch, a strong final tribal council speech could overhaul her whole image, not just to the jury, but to the audience as well. And I think the next bullet point on her final tribal council speech, first one needs to be, this alliance is my doing. Joe helped me do it. There's no doubt about that. I couldn't have done it without Joe, but I'm the one who did this. I went to Joe. I bonded with David. When me, David, and Mary were on a tribe together, I was the one who brought Mary into this alongside David. And obviously, we see once they all get on the same beach, David really vouches for Mary. And I think that the producers kind of played up how much David brought Mary into this. I think that was formed by Eva after the tribe swap. She went to David, she went to Mary, and brought both of those two into this power alliance. And through that, David and Mary got close. But Eva needs to be taking as much credit as she possibly can for the formation of the alliance that's been running the entire game as soon as it got formed. The second bullet point that I think could overhaul her entire perception and maybe even win her $1 million is that the only reason that this alliance was as powerful as it was is because of all the advantages and idols that I had. People knew if they came after us, I had a whole Tony Vlachos bag of tricks that I could dig into. And everybody was too scared to come after us because they knew how high the odds were that I could pull something out of my pocket that would blow up any move you wanted to make against us. And if you weren't the collateral damage from that, you knew that we were coming for you next. And that's a really big deal. It's a really big deal that nobody's talking about. That the reason this alliance felt so untouchable was that all of the idols and advantages were with Eva, who was at the center of this alliance. If they were ever in trouble, Eva could play something that could keep this alliance intact and take out one of the outsiders if they were trying to stir up trouble, which, as we saw, none of them ever really wanted to do until they knew it was them going home and they had no other option left. That's a really big deal. And nobody else in the game can claim that. Joe can't say that I had all these advantages and idols because he didn't. Kyle and Camila can't say, well, we protected the alliance with all these advantages and idols because they didn't. Eva's the only person who can say that. And if Eva goes in to this final tribal council with the mentality of all of this, the entirety of the legacy of this season being this power alliance that got formed is my doing, and she can articulate that to the jury, which I do think there is a fair case for. I don't think that that's a lie that she's spinning. Do I think it's totally true? Probably not. But is there a case to be made that that is what happened? Absolutely there is. I don't think this alliance is as tight and as strong and as untouchable as it is without Eva having all of her advantages and idols. I'm not totally sure David finds his way and Mary finds her way into this power alliance in those early merge days if it's not for Eva during the tribe swap getting really close with those two and saying, hey, I got Joe on the other side. We're all going to get together. I just don't see that happening. And so Eva really, really needs to own what she has done over the course of this season. And I have no doubt that she will. It's just a matter of if she can do it in a powerful enough way, right? Like, I think she really needs to throw Joe to the wayside during her final tribal council speech if she's sitting there. I think that she needs to look at Joe and say, I'm sorry, bro, but you were just a pawn in my game. And she'll never say it like that because it's just not her style. But that needs to be the crux of what she's getting at. Oh, Joe, hey, I love Joe. I had one of my most vulnerable, raw moments, probably in her life, definitely on Survivor. And Joe was the one who pulled me out of that. I have nothing but love and respect for this guy. But if we're talking about our games, he was just along for the ride. That's got to be the case that Eva makes at Final Tribal Council if she wants a chance to win this thing. There cannot be this, oh, me and Joe worked together and I had the idols and Joe had the numbers and we brought all this together and now we're sitting at the end together and no matter who wins, we both won. You're handing Joe $1 million if you do that, assuming he's sitting there with you. And even if he's sitting on the jury, I think there's still some risk in saying that because everyone on the jury might be like, oh, well, you just played Joe's game. You backed him up with all your idols and advantages, and now he's sitting on the jury. And this is an interesting comment here, right? Eva will go hard on Joe. She's very competitive. She won't vote him out, and she would take him to the end if she has the choice, but she will go hard at Tribal. I do believe that. I think that she's played hockey with boys her entire life. I do not see Eva just rolling over and saying, give Joe the $1 million. But what I do think she could struggle with is effectively cutting down Joe at Final Tribal Council, which is, I don't think she has to be nasty about it, but she does need to take credit away from Joe and put it in her lap. Because right now, we as the audience, and I'm sure the jury, is giving all the credit for everything Eva has done in this game to Joe. She's got to take that back. And that's going to take some hard moments looking that dude in the eye sitting right next to you saying, you didn't play as good of a game as you thought you did. And I don't know if she'll have the capacity to do that, to properly go after him. That's what I'm curious to see. Let's get into Camila here. Camila is perhaps the most fascinating case left in this game right now. She has no idols or advantages played, 1 immunity challenge win, 0 votes against her, has only voted wrong twice, with 1 being seemingly intentional with the vote she threw on Mitch when they got Shaheen out last week. So, take that as you will. And she's been playing outside of the main alliance. She's the only person left who's been playing outside of this main alliance the entire game, with Kyle as her lifeline into every major vote this season. The reason she's been queued in on every major vote and is very sparsely been left out of what's going to happen week to week is because she has this connection to Kyle, who can give her all the information that she needs. But when I look at Camila, I think that she could have a very powerful and even a winning Final Tribal Council, but only if Kyle is not sitting next to her. And we saw on the next time on Survivor that she alludes to that. And even saying like, hey, I don't think we can sit next to each other at the end. So her wheels are already spinning and she's already picking up what I'm putting down. And looking at the case for Camila, it's that Kyle has been the face of all of their moves, both to us, the audience, and to the jury. If she were to sit down next to Kyle at Final Tribal Council, she would need to simultaneously cut down his game while building up her own. It's a very similar position to Eva, but she's starting, I think, in an even more precarious position than Eva is, because nothing she has done has been very public to the other players in the game. So she's going to need to really present herself to the jury, her full self, her full status as a player in this game for the first time at Final Tribal Council. And that can work, but it can also backfire, right? There is something that when you're on the jury, you want to be blown away. You want to hear things that you never thought you would hear coming out of any of the three people sitting across from you. And to do that is very difficult. And if you're in a position like Camila is, if you're sitting next to Kyle, it's even more difficult because you need to cut down his game. He doesn't need to cut down yours. And sometimes that can be perceived, as my good friend Solomon Yee said, Pepsi needs to cut down Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola ain't worried about what Pepsi's doing. And I think there's some real legitimacy to that statement, that when you're sitting on the jury and one person is just yapping about how this other person's game wasn't as good as you think it is, and my game was better, and this is why his game wasn't that good, and my game was great. There is the potential there for everyone to be like, you kind of just sound desperate. It sounds like, especially if the other dude isn't talking bad about your game, it could be you sound desperate. It sounds like you know that you're behind right now, and you're just scraping and clawing, not to bring yourself up, but to bring the other person down. And I'm not talking about in like a petty or a moral sense or anything like that. That's not what turns you off as a jury member. What turns you off as a jury member is like, what are you trying to sell me right now? You know, it sounds like you're really trying to sell me something. And I'm not sure if it's totally true. And this other dude, it doesn't sound like he's trying to sell me something. It sounds like he's just telling me what happened. And that is often far more convincing than somebody trying to scrap their way through a final tribal council. Now, there is a world where Camila can come out and say, hey, I'm going to blow your freaking mind. And she does just that and says, me and Kyle were working together this entire game. None of you had any idea about it. And I had this role in this vote, and I had this role in this vote. And even the people I was voting with didn't fully conceptualize what my role was in all of this. That's like a super real path that this could go down. I still don't think it could be enough to win, because Kyle is going to be able to sit there and say, I kept you in and out of this alliance at the same time. It was me who kept you in as a lifeline. When your name was on the chopping block, I'm the one who turned it around on David. I could have stuck with the main alliance. Everybody was cool voting you out. Joe, Mary, Eva, everybody was cool voting you out. It was me who saved you. So you wouldn't even be sitting here to make that case if I didn't save you back then. And if I didn't keep you in the game round after round after round after round, because of what your game offered me, because of what your role as my secret partner offered my game. That's why you're sitting here right now. And I think Kyle would make that case, and I think it would be a winning case, to be honest with you. So I think Camila needs to find a way, whether it's voting him out at Final Five, whether it's putting him in fire and seeing him lose there. Camila needs to find a way to get Kyle out of the game. And if she does that, she may even be my front runner, to be honest with you, because I'm not buying Joe's stock like everybody else is. So let's get into that. For a lot of people, Joe seems to be the front runner. And I don't think that's undeserved. The guy has 4 immunity wins, is currently 1 away from the record. He'll have a chance to tie it in the finale, which would honestly be a pretty cool storyline. Only has 1 vote against him. He's been perceived as the head of this power alliance the entire game, and has kept his number 1 ally in Eva untouched. 0 votes against Eva. A big part of that has to do with Joe's status in this game. And also, let's be honest, he has by far the best story of anybody out there. I mean, Eva's got a pretty good story, but Joe, single father, he has the tragedy with his sister. I mean, there's a lot going on with what Joe can present as the reason that he is doing all of this in the first place, right? That matters a lot to a lot of people. Is like, okay, well, what's your why? Why are you here right now? And Joe's got quite a lot to dig into when that inevitably comes up at Final Tribal. And I think that he will make the pitch that he did exactly what he set out to do from day one, which was, I am going to play this game with honesty. I'm going to play this game with integrity. I'm going to be a man of my word, and I'm going to set a good example for my kids that are watching me back at home. And for the most part, he's done that. Not totally. And I'm going to tackle that here in just a few seconds, but that is going to be the pitch that he makes. And I think that that's not a winning pitch. I don't think it's a winning pitch with this cast, and I don't think it's a winning pitch in modern day Survivor. There's something to be said that every time, which was not often, but every time this game took a strategic turn, Joe was frantic and ultimately outplayed. I think every time by Kyle. When they were at the tribe split, and it was the 3 California girls and Kyle and Camila, Joe didn't have much of a role in what went down in that vote. And he was completely outwitted, outsmarted, outplayed by Kyle and Camila. When his name was the decoy vote for getting Mary out, I believe. Yeah, it was Mary. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But when Mary was going home and they put out Joe as the decoy vote, yeah, it was because Mary said, hey, Joe, I'm voting for you. Said it publicly. Joe was all over the place. He hated being the decoy vote. He couldn't stand being the decoy vote. He was freaking out the entire time. And there's something there that I think is an indictment of Joe's game. And obviously, the thing that's the most fresh on our mind is what happened with the Shaheen vote. The dude was losing his mind. Kyle, once again, outwitted, outsmarted, and outplayed this dude. He literally had Joe on strings. I would never call Kyle a puppet master, but that was some puppet mastery from Kyle for the Shaheen vote. And we can debate whether that was the optimal move or whether he should have actually just gotten Joe out or Eva out or whatever. But in a vacuum, what happened with that move was Kyle running strategic and social circles around Joe. And if Kyle is on the jury, I'm sure that he's going to make it known to everybody that that's what was happening. And if Kyle is sitting next to Joe at the end, then 100% Kyle is going to be saying something along the lines of, I beat you here, I beat you here, and I beat you here. So you tell me where you got the better of me outside of a challenge. And we'll talk about that, but you're going to be hard-pressed to find those moments. And Kyle would be right if he said that. He would be right. If Joe is going to win, I think a big part of what he has to do is he has to own the parts of his game that he doesn't like. If he comes in with this whole, I was a man of my word, I played with integrity, I played with honesty, blah, 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 blah. You're looking at a Mike Turner situation. You're looking at a coach in South Pacific situation. And honestly, I'm expecting to see that with Joe. I am expecting to see Joe go in there and say, I played with honesty, I played with honesty and integrity, and I was a man of my word this whole game, and I kept evil all the way to the end, and I won challenges, and I set a great example for my kids, and now I'm here. And the first person who's going to speak up, he might not stand up, but he's going to speak up, is going to be David. And he's going to say, not only did you go back on your word when you said that you would vote Camila out the game, and I came up to you and I told you, Kyle and Camila are going to approach you before Tribal, and they're going to try to get the vote off of Camila. And when that happens, I need you to stand by me and still vote her and make sure Eva votes her too. And Joe said, I'll do that. And then he ended up not voting Camila that night. And then not only did he do that, but he went behind David's back again to vote him out. So David is going to be the poster child of this game of honesty and integrity and being a man of your word is a bunch of BS because you destroyed my game. You destroyed my game by being dishonest with me, by backstabbing me, and by lying to my face. And I don't think Joe is going to be able to own that, at least not right away. At least not right away. Because he got confronted by David about it already. And David said, you went back on your word. And Joe's quote was, it is impossible for me to go back on my word. Impossible. So I don't think that he's going to walk into Final Tribal saying, I'm going to own the dirty parts of my game. I think he's going to need to be convinced by the jury to do that. Just like Mike Turner was in 42. Just like Coach was in South Pacific. And those people never win. Because the jury don't like that. The jury doesn't like it when they got to convince you to own their game. Because at the end of the day, you can't let the jury win over you. And that's an admission of saying, you guys understood my game better than I did. I'm sorry. You lose. You just lost. Just like Coach did, just like Mike Turner did. And no disrespect to either of those guys. Those guys are legends of the game. But that is what happened. It is what happened. And it feels like Joe is being set up for the same exact thing to happen to him. And I don't see what his winning pitch is unless he can say, I came into this game with the idea of I'm going to be a man of integrity. I'm going to be a man of honesty. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I set a good example for my kids and change the way that this game of Survivor is perceived and the way that people can win this game is perceived. And that's what I came here to do. And I found out that wasn't as possible as I thought. And I had to get my hands dirty. And I needed metaphorical blood on my hands to get here. And David, I did backstab you. I did. And I'm sorry about that. But I needed to do it to sit here now. And to everybody else on the jury who feels like they were backstabbed by me or blindsided by me, guess what? You probably were. But if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So whatever questions you have, whatever explanations you want, I'll do my best to give them to you. But understand that I have a perception of my own game that is rooted in reality and is validating to how all of you on the jury feel about how I played with you. That would go a long way. It would go a very long way with the numbers that he has of 4 immunity wins, only 1 stray vote against him from Mary when she went home. That would go a long way, but I don't know if Joe has the capacity to do that. We heard him say it himself. It is, quote, impossible for me to go back on my word. I don't know if his perception of his game is rooted in reality, and I lean towards thinking that it's not. And those finalists, they never win. They never, ever, ever win. So that gets us in to the last finalist that we have here, and that's Kyle Frazier. Kyle is one of, and in my opinion, should be considered the out-and-out front-runner to win this game. Kyle, like Joe, has brought his number 1 ally to the end of the game. Unlike Joe, he's managed to keep it secret from everybody else for 24, 25 days now. That is something that neither Joe nor Eva can claim, and that is an achievement in Survivor. That is something you should be striving for in Survivor, is don't let everybody else know who you're truly working with. Because if that's the case, you can operate in silence and you can execute so much more efficiently than if everybody knows your business and if everybody knows what's going on. It's something that me and Sue were really, really good at for a while. Towards the end, it started to fall apart a bit. But me and Sue, nobody, especially on that early Tuku tribe, nobody had any idea that me and Sue were as close as we were. And I'm not trying to gas us up or anything, but it was a masterclass in what we're talking about here on the Tuku pre-merge tribe. And all of their exit press confirmed it. They had no idea. And that is something that Kyle and Camila have achieved here. They have managed to keep their alliance secret, and they have been able to execute moves like getting Thomas out of the game, like getting David out of the game, like getting Shaheen out of the game. All the big moves of this season have been orchestrated by Kyle and Camila. And the main reason that they've been able to carry out those moves and execute them as efficiently as they have is because nobody suspected that those two were where the vote was going through. Everybody thought that they were just as in it as everybody else was. Nobody knew that the people that were really in it, that were really calling the shots, were Kyle and Camila. It's a very powerful thing and a very difficult thing to achieve, and they've done it. Thank you, Connor. I did my best. I hope I made you proud. That's all I can hope for. And thank you to everybody right now who's hanging out in the chat. I love seeing all your comments. I'm seeing them. I'm going to try to go through some of them towards the end of the show here as we are getting closer and closer to the end. So don't think they're going unseen. We're going to go after some of them. We're going to try to do some of these questions as well. But sticking with Kyle here. He has 2 immunity wins, 1 idol played correctly, 3 votes against him, canceled out by that idol, and is the only remaining player in the game, and this is a big one, to have voted correctly every single time he went to tribal. 8 for 8. He is the only real strategic resume to present to the jury. And Camila does too, but Kyle's been the face of all that. So if they're sitting there together, you got to imagine the benefit of the doubt from the jury is going to go to Kyle. He's the only person with a legitimate strategic resume. We already laid it out, both talking about Joe, how he's had circles ran around him by Kyle, and talking about Kyle specifically. The California Girls Tribal against Kyle and Camila. Massive resume booster right there. Now, granted, pre-merge moves do not carry quite the same weight, or really any weight, to the jury at the end. But that was a huge move where they had him dead to rights. They could have split the vote. They didn't do that. They could have done so many things to get Kyle or Camila out at that round, and they failed to do it because of how active and how efficient Kyle and Camila were in the move that they made. Kyle being the face of that move. His move to get David out to save Camila was a great example of having your back up against the wall and persevering through that, right? That's what both of those moves were. The California Girls Thomas vote out and the David vote out were both great examples of my back is up against the wall. I don't have a lot of options here. I got to come up with something, and I got to come up with it fast. And both times, exactly what he wanted to happen happened because of his activity, because of his willingness to go forward and to make moves happen. And that's huge. It's huge. And now, the one thing that I think was missing from Kyle's game is what we saw on the Shaheen vote. Was like, okay, you're good when the wolves are coming after you, but can you be a wolf yourself? Can you be somebody that can orchestrate a move from nothing, right? Because the Thomas vote out and the David vote out, that was impressed upon Kyle. That was something is happening and I need to react to it to keep my game intact the way I want it to survive. But the Shaheen move was, I have an easy spot to the next round here. I can just vote whoever everybody else wants to vote. I know it's not going to be me, and I'll wake up tomorrow and boom, I'm in the final 5. But this move was different. This move was different because Kyle said, I'm going to be the action that causes reactions. For the first time in this game, Kyle said, I'm going to make something from nothing here so that I can have another clear-cut move on my resume. And it worked to perfection. Again, was it the best move there? Would it maybe have been better to get out some of the bigger jury threats like Joe or like Eva? Or maybe even ask Camila? Probably too early for that. But yeah, I think there's a fair argument for that. I really do. I think getting Eva out there would have been an even bigger move than getting Shaheen out. I think you would have gotten a bigger jury threat out. I think that you really would have weakened Joe's claim at the end of the game if you get his number one ally out without him knowing. But still, he set his mind to a move and he executed it. And it went exactly the way he wanted it to. And that is something nobody else this season can claim. Nobody else this season can say, I had a move I wanted to make with no reason to make it. I just wanted to do it. And I did it. And it worked. It's a huge resume point. A huge, huge resume point for Kyle. And it's why I think that he's if he's sitting at the end, he should be the clear and obvious winner of Survivor 48. He should clean sweep the jury. I mean, it should be a perfect game with an asterisk, right? Had 3 votes against him, but they all got canceled out by idols. I think he deserves that on this season. As a player in Survivor 48, he deserves to have a perfect game. It's clear and obvious to me. Clear and obvious. And so, that's kind of my rundown of the state of 48 and where the finalists are and kind of looking at their journeys to get here and what their path to the end might look like. Mitch, I don't even think you have a path to the end. And if you do get to the end, I don't know what your argument to win looks like. Eva, I think, has a pretty clear path to the end. I think will probably be sitting at the end. And I think the case is there for her to be winning $1 million and the title of Sole Survivor. It's just a matter of if she has the chutzpah, if she has the fire, and if she has the cutthroat within her to make that argument. And that's where my question mark comes in. Will she be willing to break down what Joe's involvement was over the course of this season to big up herself? I don't know. I'm not saying she won't. I'm not saying she can. I just don't know if she has that in her. And I would love to be proven wrong. I don't quite see it. Camila, I think, could be the front runner of this game if she cuts Kyle out of the game, if she cuts Kyle off at Final 5, or if she can somehow put him in fire and he loses. If she sits next to Kyle, I don't quite see where her winning argument is with Kyle sitting there. If she gets Kyle out of there, I think she might have the best argument to win, because all these moves that her and Kyle have been making throughout the game, all the biggest move of the game, those then become her moves. Those are not Kyle's moves. Those are not Kyle and Camila's moves anymore. If Kyle's sitting on the jury, the only person that can claim those moves is Camila. And that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. If Joe sits at the end, he needs to own his game. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I think he's going to have to be convinced by the jury that his hands were far dirtier and far bloodier over the course of this game than he wants to admit. And that is a losing Final Tribal. And we've seen it play out shot for shot remake time and time again on this show. It's how I see Joe's Final Tribal going. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about that. I would love to be wrong about that. But that's where I'm at right now. Kyle, we just broke down. If he's sitting at the end, he should get every vote from the jury. That's where I'm at right now. So looking at more generally 48, because this season has been so devoid of big moves or really legitimate strategy other than big group eats the small group, I do again think, and we talked about this when we were breaking down Mitch, that I think there is room for somebody to make the biggest move of this season, whether it's Eva going after Joe, whether it's Mitch orchestrating some big blindside against one of the other remaining 4, whether it's Camila cutting Kyle. Like, the resumes are so light this season that there is legitimate room for somebody to make one big move at Final 5 and that be enough for them to win the game. I do believe that is the current state of Survivor 48. Could Mitch wake up and decide to make his game-changing move? Could Eva or Joe go after the other one and send the other one to the jury and that be their big move? Could Camila take out Kyle? Like, there is room in this finale episode for the whole power dynamic of the remaining 5 players to totally get turned on its head. I think that is within the realm of possibility here. And that is my state of the season for Survivor 48. So I do need to get out of here, but I don't want to go without answering some of the questions that you guys have here in the chat. Big shout out to Daryl Seymour, who's been very active tonight. Kimberly Bergquist, Hazel Soulful. Thank you so much to all you guys for being in here. But let's get into some of these questions. If you got a question now, if you're just tuning in, it doesn't have to be about 48. It can be about 48 since that was our topic over the course of the episode. But there are some questions in there and we can answer them. This one isn't a question, but big thank you to my older brother right there, Gabe Ortiz, third in the jury, first in our hearts. It's the only place I want to be. So thank you, big bro, for that. But looking at some of the questions here, let's take one from the Dylan Barry Network. Do you think we could have a bitter jury? The new era has felt more kumbaya compared to older seasons. So this is very interesting analyzing like this 48 jury because this season has been so emotional, not necessarily in like the 46 way that it was a lot of big emotions in 46, right? I wouldn't say that there were a lot of big emotions in 48, but I don't think that people were playing with strategy in the game first. I think they were leading with their hearts. I really do. And there is something very charming and very endearing about that, whether it's Eva saying, I just want all my friends to get along, whether it's Star playing. Obviously, Star is like the most heart-filled player I've ever seen on Survivor, like maybe ever. She's all heart, right? And I think it's awesome. And I love to watch Star. And I wish we got more of her, but we'll talk more about that next week. But there's a good case to be made here that this was like a lead with your heart, play with your heart kind of season. And those are very difficult to judge. Those juries are very difficult to judge because I think there's a lot of potential for them to be better for that reason of like, I really trusted you, Joe, and you voted me out and you said you wouldn't do that and you did it anyway. Why did you do that? And I think that those are real questions that could come up. But I also think that because it was such a heart-filled season, that there could be more of this kind of post-game kumbaya of like, I'm at Ponderosa, but Joe's such a great guy, and Eva's playing so hard, and Kyle's a nice dude, and Camilla's so smart, and yada, 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 that they kind of leave that bitterness at the door. But I do think that you could see them say, I'm going to vote for Joe because I liked him the best. Not because he had the best game, not because he's got the best resume, not because of what he says at Final Tribal. Joe was just my best friend out there, and that's why I'm going to vote for him. Or Eva was just my best friend out there, and that's why I'm going to vote for her. So I wouldn't say that's bitter, but I don't think it's going to be as strategy-based, as resume-based, as Final Tribal Council speech-based as we've seen seasons in the past. Obviously, season 47, I think, being a great example of the whole jury voting about game, strategy, resume, those kinds of things, how well you talked at Final Tribal. So I don't think I would say that they're going to be bitter, but I think it's going to be a very emotional vote for a lot of people, and that it's like, I liked him the best, and that's why I'm voting for him. So it's not quite bitter, but there could be similar effects where people are not voting because they were the best player or because they were the best game or whatever. It was just, I liked them the best. They make me feel good when I talk to them. And I could see that being the case for this season here. Let's go to Open Window 95. Gabe, do you think Kyle would let Camila get to 4? I feel like he would rather take Mitch since his own game is too similar to Camila's. I think that he would let her get to 4. And the reason that I think that is what we were talking about when we were breaking down Camila's role in this finale. Is that, God forbid, for Kyle's sake, that he says, you know what? I'm going to take on my number 1. I'm going to organize the votes against Camila tonight. And everyone's like, well, hold on. Mitch is kind of the easy vote here. You want to do this Camila thing. I don't really get it. It's making me uncomfortable. Like, if Mitch is the easy vote, are you coming after me and you're lying to me about Camila being the vote? Like, it just, not that those conversations will happen verbatim, but it just adds this anxiety into the other players that I don't think you want to invite at this point in the game. And in terms of Kyle's role in all of this, I think that he feels pretty good about making a case against Camila at the end. Would he rather Camila not be there at the end? I 100% believe that. I don't think he wants Camila sitting there at the end, but I don't think that it's the end all be all. I don't think it's if she's on the jury, I win. If she's sitting next to me a final tribal, I lose. I think he feels pretty good about his chances either way. So it's like if you're in this position of Kyle and you have a real shot at winning this, why make things messy? Why stir up the pot like that if you have your path to the finale already set? So I don't think he's going to want to get rid of. I don't think he's going to want to get rid of Camila just because it's so messy, and messiness in Survivor paints a target on your back, and a target on your back is when you go home. And if you're this close to the end, like probably not the time if you're Kyle to make a big move. You already got all the moves in the game. All the moves in the game are on your resume. Do you need one more against Camila? Do you really think you can't beat Camila in a final tribal council? Like, I just don't see him being too worried about that. And also, let's not forget, there is always fire. And fire is anybody's game. So if Kyle's in a position where he wants to get Camila out, he could be like, I'll vote Mitch out tonight, but I'm going to put her in fire tomorrow and we'll see what happens. And then, it's in God's hands at that point. So I don't see him going after her at 5. I think that probably Camila is going to leave either at Final Tribal Council or she's going to be put in fire. Maybe she makes it to the end, but I don't think Kyle's going to be too gung-ho about getting Camila out of the game. And again, if you want to leave a comment in the comment section, by all means, go for it. We're doing a little Q&A right now. It can be Survivor 48 related. It can be about 47. It can be general Survivor, whatever you want it to be. And also, if you just want to leave a nice comment, that's fun. If you want to insult me, that's also fun too. No qualms with that. And I just want to, again, thank everybody for tuning in. This is the inaugural episode of Gabe's Big Move, my first foray into doing my own Survivor show, which has been something that I wanted to do for a while. And now that we're doing it, this is, an incredible amount of fun that I've had over this past hour. I'm excited to do a season in review next week. I think we're going to be doing that on Monday. The normal run of show here is going to be every Tuesday at 7:15. Next week, we're going to be on Monday doing a big season in review for season 48, which I'm very, very excited about, because I think that while this season has been very slow, some may even say a bit boring, I still think that there is so much to talk about, and it is a really intriguing season to kind of dissect and get into. So a season in review is going to be fun. But then after that, we hit the off season, and that's what I'm really excited for. I want to do a lot of big picture Survivor stuff. I got some really cool topics planned that I think you guys are going to love, and I can't wait to talk about them on here. So I think that's going to do it for the inaugural episode of Gabe's Big Move. Thank you so much for joining in. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to everybody who commented in the comment section over there, who left me some questions, who left me some praise, who just gave your thoughts on everything that we were talking about. Thank you so much again. This was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again next week. See you then.